Hello, namaste, and welcome to this discussion on AI and the future of power. Today's discussion is related to this book by Mr. Rajiv Malhotra, which is titled Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Power Five Battlegrounds. As we all know, if the Industrial Revolution changed the 18th and the 19th century, 21st century belongs to artificial intelligence, and we are already seeing signs of this. These days, most news and debates across platforms are about technology, AI, data ownership, and how they are impacting our society and power equations. How the world and India specifically uses AI and other technologies will decide who will emerge the winner of this century. Indeed, this very important book by Sri Rajiv couldn't have come at a better time. It gives me a great pleasure today to moderate the discussion on this very important subject with the author, Mr. Rajiv, and an esteemed panel. I'm Alpesh Patel. I'm founder of an AI venture. I'm an author and a researcher on Indian history and culture. Thank you, Mr. Rajiv, for giving me this opportunity. We all know
Thank you.
Mr. Rajiv, who is a very well known public figure. He has huge corporate experience. He has researched on history, culture, and civilizations for many years, and he's a best selling author of many books. Interestingly, in the 70s, Mr. Rajiv was trained as a physicist and then as a computer scientist specializing in artificial intelligence. There couldn't have been a better expert to write this book. Thank you, Mr. Rajiv, for giving us this fabulous book.
Thank you
For
very much.
today's discussion, Mr. Rajiv is joined by some eminent personalities. So let me now introduce them. Firstly, Mr. Konrad Elst is an Orientalist from Brussels. He's an author of over 30 books in Dutch and English. He's written mostly about comparative worldviews and about ancient and contemporary Indian history. Welcome, Mr. Konrad. Next, we have Mr. Abhijit Chavda, who is a theoretical physicist, writer, and an IT professional who has studied world history, geopolitics, culture, and impact of technology on civilization. So, with that, thank you, gentlemen, and welcome. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you on this very interesting subject. With that, now let me request Mr. Rajiv to give his opening remarks. Mr. Rajiv.
So thank you, all of you. Thank you, Alpesh. Thank you, Abhijit. Thank you, Konrad. This is my first meeting with Abhijit. I'm delighted to meet a kindred spirit, ex-physicist, a spiritualist, and interested in Indian history. So those are common grounds. I have had the pleasure of interacting with Alpesh before. In fact, I launched his book and very delighted that he's decided to discuss my book now. And Conrad, of course, and I go back a long time. We've had many, many great conversations. I've been researching this book for 5 years. The subject matter is deep and vast. It's not a matter of jugaad that you pick up the latest news and start responding with some quick quote or do a quick video. Uh, uh, I decided to keep it confidential because I felt that too many people will do a quick knockout. They'll do some kind of a video interview or a YouTube and try to sort of get ahead. And then that way it'll dilute the value and the impact of my book. The book has made many predictions. I would say 10% or 20% of the things of the predictions that already come out true. Another 80% I think will come out true. They are future events that are not yet happening. About India, its economy, about world politics, about the nature of the self, the nature of geopolitics, the rise of China. I'm making all these predictions for the decade 2020 to 2030. And this book is pretty daring and pretty bold and pretty open about making the statements on what I think is the likely course of action because of AI. And I've organized these the impact of AI on society. It's not a book on technology. I'm not going to teach you how to write Python or any of that stuff. I'm not interested in the in how you do AI. I'm interested in what's the impact on society. And the impact on society I've organized into 5 battlegrounds. These battlegrounds are, the first is on the economy, job, unemployment, these kind of things. And of course, great new things that the technology will do, great new jobs and new economy also. So there's a tussle between old economy, new economy. Will it create more jobs? Who will win? Who will lose? Will India be ahead, behind? That's one battleground. The second is geopolitics, military, national defense, security, the rise of China with AI as its main weapon. Third is this whole business of psychological mapping of people, their behavior, and predicting the behavior, and then outsmarting the behavior, using the behavior, manipulating it to sell merchandise, sell holidays, sell movies, sell experiences. All this with augmented reality coming, with wearables coming, more and more technology that kind of usurps your agency and your sense of being in control of what you are choosing. Many people have even said that maybe knowledge is obsolete. Young people, we can ask Wikipedia, we can ask Siri, we can ask Google. They'll tell us what we need to know. And I've called this syndrome the Google Devta, the Twitter Devta, the Facebook Devta syndrome, and the effect on human beings dumbing down as machines get smarter and humans get dumber. I've called it the moronization of the masses. The more moron you get, the better it is for the companies that can hack your psychology, make you do things the way they want, and sell that to their clients. And selling it to the clients is not just corporate clients with brands commercially, but also ideological brands, political elections, make you vote this way, that way, make people fight each other, conversion, evangelism. There is a whole group in the US that I've penetrated, managed to, with seminaries and think tanks, talking about the AI and the future of Christianity, the future of missionaries, the future of evangelism. The left wing, the global left is really into this in a big way. The Islamists are into it in a big way, but the people of India, other than the few AI experts who are doing it in the battleground 1, which is commercial, other than that, the rest of Indians haven't really caught on to this in a substantial way. Battleground 4 is spirituality. This is a huge topic, and I've begun to find traction with some spiritual leaders, some gurus who want to talk about it. But previously, for these 3-4 years, I found that they were not interested. They just didn't want to have anything to do with it. And then, of course, Battleground 5 is the battle for India. What happens to India as an overpopulated country, undereducated, underemployed, a lot of unemployment, a lot of marginal employment, and just so much arrogance and so much overconfidence in us becoming, super, this Vishwa Guru and superpower and all that, while the reality is not quite the same. And difficult to criticize people, difficult even in good faith, difficult to give honest feedback. So what will happen to India in all this? And India seems to have sold out its future to the digital giants. I was very critical when Facebook and Google invested in Geo. I called it a sellout. And in my book, there's a large amount of coverage on the sale of India and the recolonization of India. And I sent some private emails giving my critique. In fact, a chapter in advance to prominent economists in India, prominent thought leaders, policymakers, and they all dismissed it. And they all supported publicly that this is a great thing for India. It shows that we must be very good, that Google wants to come and buy us out. It's like a prostitute saying, I'm actually very proud I'm getting the highest value. You see, I'm for sale, and people buying me out with so much money. I must be very good. It's an inferiority complex that you feel that because they came and offered you a large price, it's a matter of pride, not realizing that what they're buying is your soul. You've sold yourself out. So I have a lot to talk about, and I'm glad this panel is here to quiz me, grill me, interview me, agree, disagree, whatever they want to do, I'm ready. So with that, I'll turn over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opening remarks. What we've done is I had the opportunity to read the book, and I've identified some very interesting subjects and topics from the book, which I would request the panel to discuss. So let me start with the first one, which is an interesting term called data capitalism. We all know that at the heart of AI is data. More the data, better the AI, and hence better the valuations of these AI companies. Now, Mr. Rajiv's book calls this data capitalism. Let me quote from his book. He says, digital capital consists of mechanisms that capture and monetize the data. And this is the very heart of the new digital economy. The vast quantity of user data the platform companies gobble up every second is the chief source of these companies' power and wealth. Individuals and organizations hand over massive amounts of data. All this data is machine readable and can be mined, curated, organized, and monetized. So is data capitalism a good trend, or is it a dangerous new wave? It's a topic open for discussion to the panel. We can start with Mr. Abhijit. What is your view, Abhijit?
Thank you, Alpesh. So at the outset, a very warm namaste to all my distinguished co-panelists. It's a real honor to be with all of you today. And I would like to congratulate Rajiv ji on writing this very important and timely book. I hope that it will spark off a much needed discussion on this matter in India and hopefully catalyze a much needed reorientation in the country. So thank you, sir, for your leadership. So, you know what they say? They say that when the service is free, you are the product. And by you, it means your data. So what every social media company does and what every app does is that it captures your data. Some of it is captured with your consent and some of it is captured without your consent. So they capture all kinds of information, your likes, your dislikes, your friends, your followers, your entire social and family network, your interactions, your GPS data, your weight, your heart rate, your blood pressure over a period of time. If you're a woman, there are apps that capture your menstrual periods and all that. They capture what restaurants you order from, what time you order, how frequently you order. They know about your shopping trends, your shopping tastes. They can read your emails. They can access your finances, your internet history, your search history. They will know if you're having an affair with somebody, if you have a mistress stashed out somewhere. They know what dodgy websites you are visiting. They know your deepest, darkest secrets. And they create a very accurate and very detailed psychological profile using all of this information, all this data, all this metadata for every individual. And they actually know you better than you know yourself. They can predict your behavior. They can influence and even control your behavior. So we have heard about this program called PRISM, which was leaked by Mr. Edward Snowden about a decade ago. So this was a program that synthesized data from a variety of disparate, apparently unrelated sources. And it could tell the controllers the instantaneous real-time mood of a nation, of a city, of a state, of an ethnicity, of a religious group. It could in real time fine-tune the mood of a country by trending various things. And today it must have advanced even more. So you can influence social groups and countries and nations in real time by trending hashtags, for example, or spreading certain kinds of fake news, etc. So big data essentially has access to data that even governments do not have access to. The database for India, for example, all this information, it's a veritable goldmine because India is an enormous market and a very diverse market. So the ability to own this data and to mine this data and to do algorithmic profiling and predictive analysis and analytics, this is what gives these big data companies so much power and influence and leverage. It gives them more power than most governments. And there are a number of factors that make these big data companies so powerful. The first thing is data. And the second thing is these incredibly sophisticated and multi-layered algorithms. So these algorithms have been developed iteratively over the best part of the past 2 decades. And that's what gives them so much power. And that's and the government that controls and regulates and owns these big data companies is the government that rules the world. And as we know, there are 2 governments of this kind, the US and China. So their power transcends national and international boundaries. And that is the big problem that we are facing today.
Fabulous. I think it's when you read the book and when you discuss, you realize how serious the issue is.
So, I think he's done a very good job of basically summarizing what's in the book and what I've also been talking about for many episodes right now, which are in the public domain. But I think we would like to hear the answer to his question. The answer to his question is not to sort of give an overall summary of the book, because, his question is data capitalism good or bad? I mean, Abhijit, he's putting you on the spot. Yeah, okay, and I don't mind being put on the spot also to ask you your view on it.
So data capitalism is essentially data imperialism. It is never good. It is colonization. It is digital colonization. It is digital imperialism. What it does is that it violates the sovereignty of a nation. It transcends national. This book is about artificial intelligence, which is a technology. Technology is essentially nothing more than a tool. It's a means to an end. And technology gives the person or the entity that wields the technology power. Power is leverage. And power does not recognize niceties like international and national boundaries. It doesn't recognize sovereignty. Power sees a vacuum, it will go and fill the vacuum. So this technology gives these big data companies the power to interfere in your internal affairs, in the country's internal affairs. It violates sovereignty. It can influence elections. It can influence. It can create unrest in a country. So clearly, this is a force for bad. See, if you look at the history of technology over the past 1,000 years or so, we can see that technology has been militarized. Technology has been weaponized, and it has been used to concentrate wealth and power among the very few. So it creates inequality, and it is what has led to colonialism. And there's a reason why people are so afraid of technology. There's a good reason for it. It's because technology is used to oppress, marginalize, and victimize and influence and control people. And now this is happening because of AI. This is poised to happen on a global scale because of AI. So this is a very dangerous trend, and this is something that India needs to be proactive about and take concrete measures to protect itself against.
Thank you. Thank you. May I now request Mr. Conrad to please tell us
Yes.
his views on data capitalism.
Right. Well, I'm very grateful for being invited. As Rajiv obviously knows, I am mostly working on subjects pertaining to the past. You see, comparative mythology, Indian history, and so on. And so this is a pretty healthy immersion into concerns about the future. However, I must say that, this data capitalism is really a very fast, accelerating growth of something that already existed. In his very overrated book, Why I Am Not a Hindu, Kancha Ilaya gives a lot of stuff that, he doesn't understand himself, but he does start with a very interesting description of commoners' lives in distant villages in India. And so he describes, you see, we are controlled by the Brahmin Banya combine, which he, of course, criminalizes. But nevertheless, he says, okay, the Brahmin is radiating his own knowledge, and he meets people in public. And he knows, for example, that Mrs. X and Mr. Y have married, and that's all he knows about them. However, the Banya in his little shop meets people privately, and that's when they gossip and they tell their secrets and so on. The Banya knows what is happening to these married people, how their marriage is going and so on. Okay, so that's already a start of data in a traditional society. Now, following the Banya into the modern age, you get the role of the banks. You see, I've always said, well, you can keep your secrets from everyone, but the banks, if they look into their own records, they know very well, what magazines you read, what cleaning lady you have to pay, and so on and so on. And so what is happening now is a exponential growth of this phenomenon. And so personally, I don't think when I hear say that it is evil, it is imperialistic and so on, I don't know, it is inevitable. And so we just have to deal with it. And it's not impossible to deal with it. I give you a very actual, a very pertinent example. Everybody has been shocked by the fact that Twitter completely banned Donald Trump and many of his followers. So whatever you think about Donald Trump, that's not at all the point. The fact that the supposedly most powerful man in the world can be silenced with one mouse click, shows you who is really boss. And now many people have said, yeah, but you see, the laws against censorship, for free speech should be used. And other people say, no, you see, it's a private company. They have a right to do this. The laws against censorship bind governments, not private companies. And so personally, I'm not too worried about this. You see, I think what Twitter has done is indeed an eye-opener and is not a nice thing in itself. But then the free market is already responding to that. People are migrating to Telegram, to me, we, and alternatives. And so that's just the normal process in the free market of the one outcompeting the other, giving alternatives where another one goes wrong or fails. So no, I don't think this is evil. It's just there. And indeed, I think that Rajiv's book greatly helps in charting our course in between the dangers that this system poses.
Fantastic. Okay, so there will always be diverse views on the technology. To say there'll be initial resistance, there'll be a few alarms, there'll be thought leaders like Mr. Rajiv who will alarm people and then force them to take a corrective action. Let me go to the second very important topic I came across in the book. It compares the industrial revolution with the AI revolution, primarily from a job creation perspective. Most reports today, if you read, they say that AI will create many more jobs than they will destroy. But Mr. Rajiv, you say the exact opposite in your book. Let me quote from the book. During the Industrial Revolution, there was an immediate loss of jobs and suffering from wage reduction, but their future generations were better off. And we all know this, we have seen this. The question now being debated is, will the pattern repeat itself with the AI-driven automation or not? And you're writing that my position on this is that AI is different compared to the prior technological disruptions because the disruption is occurring now faster, more dramatically than the prior waves of automation. Because the pace of automation was slow in the previous revolutions, displaced workers had the opportunity to retrain themselves, and the education system had time to adjust and provide workers with latest skills. On the other hand, during this current AI revolution, many workers will be caught mid-career when they expect and need to work for many more years. In a way, they will be too young to retire, but too old to retrain easily. Now, that's a very alarming situation considering that we feel that India is a nation of skilled people, educated people, and so on. So, Mr. Rajiv, can you tell us why do you think this revolution is different from the prior industrial revolution?
Thank you. So, as the quote already says, the previous revolution was very slow, over 50 years. So, a farmer, when farms got automated, a farmer had, plenty of time to migrate his source of income. It was not happening overnight, so he could continue doing old style farming. It was still viable for another 10, 20 years. He could live his life like that. And maybe his son's generation would not be a farmer. They would go to a factory in a town and get a factory job. So the transition from pre-industrial to industrial was intergenerational. It was not in the middle of somebody's life career that he has to shift. The current situation is such that when AI is adopted, the impact is very immediate. So the question is, will the corporates invest the money to reskill? And they have not committed to that. The amount of reskilling of 400 million, 500 million, whatever the total labor force is a very huge budget. Is the government going to do it? Is the corporate sector going to do it? So I see social unrest. I also know that not everybody can be skilled into AI. Not everybody can learn these kind of things. Some of the people who are well educated will become better educated and make even more money. The haves will become more rich, and the have-nots will be left behind. I mean, I see the staff in my mother's house. They come from villages. They come from Bihar. They come from, one comes from Bhutan. They come from different places. And I'm very close to them, how they are managing, sending money back home and supporting the villages and so on. These people are not going to go into AI economy. There's just no way. I mean, they're barely educated to function in a normal, in today's industrial level of education expected. India has a very large percentage of people who are uneducated, and then those who are defined as educated, lot of them are not functionally educated. They just know how to read and write their name, and therefore they're called educated. People who are really at a sufficient level are very tiny percentage who could be AI AI experts. So in absolute numbers, India may have several lakhs, several million people who will join this new AI economy. But as a percentage, it's tiny. And you have to look at the bottom 500 million people in social, demographic, economic terms. These people, what's going to happen to them? Who's going to look after them? And my concern is that the Breaking India forces will adopt them. The Breaking India forces will look after them. It's the missionaries, it's the left wing, it's the Maoists, it's the Islamists. They'll catch hold of these people who have been thrown out, who feel that they've been abandoned and disowned by their own society. And this newly disempowered people will become a social issue. That is my concern. It is not the fault of AI. It is not that we should not do AI. Of course, we should do AI. Otherwise, we lag behind China even more. But then we have to be concerned about this issue, and we have to have a proactive strategy to manage this issue.
Great. Mr. Conrad, would you like to throw some light on this?
No, basically I agree with that. I mean, I know that society is going to change and is already changing considerably. So that's obvious. You know, we just now have to face the problems that this poses. Like, for example, many in Europe, at least, now are trying to sell the idea of an automatic wage being given to everyone on the assumption that in the digital economy of the near future, very many people will be completely superfluous. And so no matter what campaigns or so you organize for better employment, many people are simply unemployable. Even if they are skilled and so on, we just don't need that many people anymore. So much is being automated. And so, you know, there is already some thinking going on about what the society of the future will look like. And so, I mean, I don't have to really give any advice about this. You see, on this, society is moving forward. And so Rajiv's book is part, a very prominent part of this growing consciousness.
Abhijit, what would be your views on this?
So AI is a very different technology from anything we have encountered in the past. It's not just a force multiplier, it's exponentiating force. So the kind of technology it is, what it does is that it allows a very small handful of people to control entire industries, entire economies. And it renders the rest of the people, the vast majority of the population, superfluous. For example, if you have a large industry such as, take any industry, you can have 20 or 50 people and they can run the entire industry over an entire nation. That's how powerful AI is. It automates everything. It has algorithms that make decisions on the fly in real time. And we don't even know what logic goes behind that. So it's entirely automated, and you can have just a handful of people managing everything. So what happens to the rest of the people? That is the very big problem. So as of now, like Mr. Rajiv said, those people will become unemployed, unemployable. They'll become a very large burden on society. That's what AI does. It's going to place a great amount of stress on society, and this problem can be used by forces that are inimical to a nation, such as Breaking India forces, to foment problems, to foment anarchy, to foment riots, unrest, and various other issues in the country. So this is one of the big problems of AI. It is going to reduce jobs like anything. It's going to knock out lots of jobs. For example, agriculture can be automated, and most farmers will become superfluous. And similarly, if you look at small retail shops, mom and pop shops, I mean, they will all be taken over by Walmart type industries. So what happens to all these people who are earning a livelihood? They suddenly are out of a job, out of business. So this is going to create a very big disruption in the way society is and the entire societal structure. And this is the challenge that we are facing today. So how do we continue society? How do we continue civilization with this major disruptive force? And that is the issue.
Sure. I think my personal view is the industrial revolution versus the AI revolution is different in three ways. Number one, when we talk about the industrial revolution, take automobile as an example, right? With the multiplying of automobiles, there were actually more and more jobs because it gives more and more power to people to buy such automobiles. So hence, there is a multiplier of a demand there. If you take a parallel in the AI, there is no multiplier of demand there, number one, because it's actually more on the delivery side there on the consumption side. Second, if you say in terms of the availability of skills, an automobile creates a skill for the highest level as well as for a car mechanic. But if you say AI, there is no job for a car mechanic, kind of a, so to say, a lower spectrum of the end of a person. It's only for the data scientists and the high end people. So as Mr. Rajiv has rightly mentioned, it will create more elite, high end, educated people's job, but it will not multiply for the lower end of the spectrum. And indeed, this will definitely disrupt the society in terms of how we allocate jobs, how we work. I mean, when a person like Mr. Gates says that AI should be taxed on the corporates, definitely means that there is something to think about in terms of whether we can sustain the societies in a post AI era. So definitely there is something to think about, and it's a big disruption for the society. Let me go now to the third and very interesting topic on inequalities and the social disruption. Now, it is believed that development of new technology creates more job, reduces poverty, and more importantly, improves the quality of lives of people. But in your book, Mr. Rajiv, you state that the spread of AI will increase wealth inequality and leave more people poorer. To quote from your book, you said, automation will create a dichotomy between haves and have nots. Massive unemployment will occur simultaneously with shortages of professional in the latest technologies. Those who technically qualify, possess the latest knowledge, and can work competitively in the new economy will be rewarded with high paying jobs. But those new skills will create those elites. Unfortunately, most workers will be left behind to face unemployment or exist on meager living. And you add that artificial intelligence will increase economic divisions by worsening the disparity that already exists in the society. And you quote the Global Wealth Report of 219 by Credit Suisse Wealth Institute, indicating that the top 1% of the world's richest people own 45% of the world's wealth. Now, indeed, that's alarming. So, Mr. Rajiv, would you like to say what role is AI potentially playing in this haves and have-nots kind of a scenario?
Thank you. So, I've read a lot of economic reports from World Economic Forum, McKinsey, Price Waterhouse, Ernst and Young, International Labor Organization, United Nations, many UN reports, Oxford, economics, all kind of reports. And I find that the positive ones are all top down, written by the corporate people, people like FICCI and CII and all these corporate advisors and corporate consultants, because they want to get a fee from the company, from the corporate sector, to give them the reports that the corporate sector likes. And the corporate sector wants to look like it's doing a good job, it's creating jobs and so on. They don't want to have political problems right now. So the reports you have to take with a grain of salt. The other reports, which are written by International Labour Organization, World Bank, those are reports that you have to read also in order to understand the impact on the working class, the poorer class, the disempowered people. And it's very appalling when you look at what percent of income the top 1% have, what percent of total income of a country goes to the top 1%, and what percent of the total assets owned in the country are owned by the top 1%, and then the top 10%. India is pretty bad. India's concentration of wealth is pretty bad. Russia is bad. There are some countries that are pretty bad. Most countries, with rare exceptions, you'll find that there is a pyramid with a few people owning a lot. But the most disturbing thing is that this trend is getting worse. The trend is getting worse. If you look at the figures for today and you look at the figures for 15, 20 years ago, the figures, there is more concentration of wealth today. So that's the statistical fact. Now, obviously, the data capitalism, like any capitalism, means that if I own the data, I own the algorithms, I own the infrastructure, then I'm going to make more money on it, and you don't. So you are just one of the millions or billions of people in the database, and you don't have any proprietary knowledge, proprietary rights. You don't own intellectual property. So most people are not going to get the same kind of benefit as the ones at the top of the pyramid. I think there'll be many tiers. At the top will be the very big trillionaires. Right now, you have people with more than 100 billion value. There was not even a person with 10 billion value several years ago. Rockefeller and one or two people became the first billionaire, and it was considered a very big deal. Now you have people with more than 100 billion. You will have trillionaires in the next couple of decades. Within the next 10, 20 years, you'll have people who got net worth of $1 trillion. So now at the bottom of the pyramid, you'll have 50% that are basically managing their and able to meet their expenses because of subsidies. These people get free, in India, you look at how many people get free housing, free electricity, they get some subsidized food, food is subsidized because of the whole farm kind of thing. Then education, they don't pay market wages. Even to go to JNU, it's not a fair market price of education like a private university would charge. So many things, medicines, so many things are subsidized. So this subsidy, on top of that, India is a poor country. So a poor country subsidizing for those who are the poorest among them. It's very difficult to continue sustaining that. Then you look at India has to import weapons. India can't defend itself with domestic weapons. That's another AI problem I've talked about. AI is worsening this. So to spend tens of millions of dollars for every Rafale jet, each Rafale jet, tens of millions of dollars, takes so many thousand man years of labor export to make one jet, buy one jet. It's very difficult. So, this exploitation is inevitable. And I think we have to understand the nature of this. And I have some thoughts in this book, very clear thoughts, what has to happen. I have other books coming, volume 2, volume 3, 4 coming down the pipe very quickly, where I'm giving more solutions. But denying the problem is not a good idea. This is those who are into denial mode, कि कोई problem नहीं है, सब ठीक हो जाएगा, that is very irresponsible, I would say. So the billionaire types in Mumbai and various places, the few tycoons, I criticize them a lot in this book because they have not shouldered the responsibility, social responsibility. It's a lot of lip service. And Indian society is looking up to them like they are some gods or something. But they have really not invested enough in nation building. They are too selfish, too much concentrating the wealth. And their business plans are optimizing personal success. So there is this thing I call it the Sensex economy, where all these companies that trade on Sensex, their share price, they're luring investors to invest and get more return. So this is driving the behavior, how to get more profits. This is not the optimizing the social good. It is not optimizing the dharma index or something like that. It is not optimizing the public welfare. It is optimizing selfishness. This is not in the Varna system what the Vaishya is supposed to do. And the Brahmin as the owner of intellectual capital, if you think of him as the R&D guy, the intellectual capital, is not supposed to use that intellectual property to make trillions of dollars for himself. So you can look at it from a dharma, our civilizational lens point of view and find many things going wrong. In this imbalance being created, this overly concentration of wealth, the rich getting richer, and you will find that this is a path to catastrophe.
Sure. Mr. Abhijit, you too believe that AI will be fueling this inequality? What is your view?
Yes, definitely. AI will be fueling a lot of inequality in the future because it is going to concentrate wealth and power in a very small number of people. So essentially, it's the question of who is the beneficiary of AI? Who is the real stakeholder? And the stakeholders are the ones who own the platforms and own the intellectual property, the algorithms and the data and all that. So they are the ones who are going to benefit the most from it. And the rest of the world is essentially just the data producers. So it's going to create a very significant, very strong wealth and power asymmetry in the world. Now, when it comes to India, it's true that India's industrialists and all these people have not done anything to develop indigenous platforms and indigenous intellectual property. And what India needs to do is India needs to find a way to unleash the immense latent energy and intellect of the Indian people. So India needs to create the right environment for entrepreneurship and for having a startup ecosystem. And there are many internal problems and inefficiencies within India that are preventing this from happening. So let's say that the existing billionaires in India have all benefited from the old corrupt crony capitalism ecosystem, which served the entrenched masters. But what we can do is we can unleash a new ecosystem and a new environment to because because lots of Indians have good ideas, have excellent ideas. Look at Silicon Valley. There's an environment over there which enables people who have good ideas to develop those ideas, to work upon them, to get capital, and turn that into billion-dollar industries. And that's what's been happening for decades. And that's how they've been able to build upon successes and create all these enormous industries. So India lacks this particular thing. And like I said, there are a couple of significant internal problems and inefficiencies that are preventing India from going forward. And I would say that India has about 10 years at most to catch up with the US and China. And if it doesn't do that within that much time, then it's essentially game over. So India needs to find a way to set its house in order.
Sure. Mr. Conrad, you would like to have your views?
I won't go into the detail of the analysis of, you see, how this is going to work out, nor in what ideas other people will be inspired by this book to further develop. So, but it's very important that a close analysis is made of the social effects of this digital revolution.
Okay, let's shift gears and now come specifically to India. We know we touched upon the India impact of AI, but let's deep dive into that now. Let me begin with asking the panel, and Mr. Rajiv has covered this in his book extensively through a detailed analysis. Is India's response to the AI revolution good enough? So, Mr. Rajiv, in your book, you suggest that India hasn't given due attention to AI that it deserves. And to quote from your book, India has recently started taking AI seriously, but the response is weak and has come rather late. China and the US have a head start of more than a decade. The ramifications are serious. Further, India's path towards AI is crippled by several factors. First, the budget for the development of AI is too tiny. The main opportunity in AI that has been identified for Indians is just to supply smart labor to foreign clients. AI has many startups in India and funded by foreign companies only. And many Indian startups are just Me Too copycats, offering little original intellectual property leadership. So we're playing the game of offering our people for others to develop their intellectual property. So let me shift the gears a little bit and come to the India story specifically and India's response to the AI revolution, right? Mr. Rajiv, in your book, you suggest that India hasn't given due attention to AI that it deserves. And to quote from your book, you mentioned that India has recently started taking AI seriously, but the response is rather weak and it has come rather too late. On the other hand, China and the US have a head start of more than a decade, and the ramifications are going to be very serious. Further, India's path forward is crippled by several factors. And you mentioned that India's budget for AI development is very tiny. The main opportunity in AI that has been identified for Indians is just to supply labor and to the foreign clients. Many AI startups in India are funded primarily by the foreign companies, and many Indian startups are just Me Too copycats offering little original intellectual property leadership. So overall, you suggest that our response is rather late, too little, too late, and it's not good enough. So would you like to tell us more about it?
Yeah, when you ask people who are making the plans for AI, and they're very defensive, they'll tell you that India has got all these great plans and it'll upskill people and create opportunities. But those opportunities are like what I call digital coolies. It's digital coolie work. It's not leadership work. It's not game-changing, paradigm-changing work. A few very smart people are entrepreneurs. The ones that are still in India, a lot of them have gone overseas and working for foreign companies. The ones in India largely are working for Microsoft India, Google India, these kind of Facebook, these kind of Western companies working in India. They're building intellectual property for those guys. They're not building intellectual properties for India. And the very, very few that are Indian entrepreneurs into their own ventures, you'll find that the venture capitalists are foreigners. The foreign venture capital is investing in them. They'll buy them out. And the exit plan of most Indian entrepreneurs who get into this field is that they want to build a company up to a certain size and then sell out and make money and be happy. So India itself is not accumulating its intellectual property. It's not owning these patents. This is a very serious problem for me. and India is as a supplier of bodies, as a supplier of labor, working on labor arbitrage, wage arbitrage, make some middlemen rich. You hire somebody for $10,000 a year, and you sell him to the American client for $30,000 a year. You make a lot of money. You could become a billionaire if you do it on a large scale long enough. Even if you do on a small scale, you export 5, 10, 15 people. You can become a millionaire in a few years. Lot of Indians have done that. This is just body. It's kind of labor arbitrage. It's no different than somebody brings 5,000 laborers from Bihar to Delhi, or maybe 500 even, or maybe 50, and gives them jobs in a construction site as a contractor supplying labor, and he's got a very big markup. Look at how little he pays them and how much he charges the client. This is now AI supplying AI labor is just another kind of labor product. Labor is the product. This is not what intellectual property is like. We have to own our intellectual property. So I'm actually puncturing the worldview and the positions of economists in India, government planners, including the Niti Aayog, a lot of the industrialists, who are making money in this. I'm saying that this is bad for India, bad for society, and they are taking the youth for a ride. They are not being straight and honest, telling the youth what the game is. And so by the time you figure it out, it'll be too late. You're finished. So I'm trying to advise proactively what is coming, so that the people who are going to be impacted know about it, and they should have a seat at the table. They should be part of the discussions. Right now, they don't have a seat at the table. The people who are going to be impacted the most, the youth in terms of labor, a lot of the poor people, the farmers, the villagers, the bottom 500 of the pyramid, they don't have a seat at the table. This discussion in now think of it this way. When you have discussions on climate change, everybody in society is being invited. The media is educated. They talk about it. School children know about it. NGOs know about it. But these people don't talk about AI. They don't talk about AI. This is a disgrace that in the case of India, the sheer knowledge, the ignorance about this information is so huge on the part of people who claim to be thought leaders.
Sure. So, Mr. Abhijit, what do you think? We are doing too little, too less on the AI front as India?
So, in the 1950s and 1960s, the Arabian Emirates like Dubai and Abu Dhabi and all these places, Oman, these were ramshackle little settlements, And then there was this oil boom, and suddenly there was this influx of Indian labor. So Indians went there and sold their labor for very cheap rates, and they built up these vast, large, glittering, luxurious cities, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Oman, and all these, Sharjah, etc. And today what you have over there is enormous, beautiful cities. And the Indians, and all of this was done by the Indians, but the Indians are not remembered at all. So what the Indians did was they went there, they supplied their labor at very cheap rates, and they built up all this property for the Arabs, and then the Arabs own it. So what did the Indians get out of it? Just a little bit of money, and that's it. So the same thing is happening all over again today. We have this labor arbitrage, like Mr. Rajiv said, and all that. So Indians are providing labor, their intellectual labor. They are creating platforms, they are building platforms, they are building intellectual property, software, algorithms, and making these foreign companies rich. Today, when you go on the social media, it is foreign territory. You are living on foreign territory. You exist in foreign territory, and the entire Indian community is living on foreign territory. So that's the situation that we are in right now. And India has clearly failed to address this. India has failed to see, since 1947, India failed to build new institutions that were non-colonial in nature. And India failed to revive old indigenous institutions that were destroyed during colonialism. And similarly, in the very same way, India has failed to develop new platforms, and it has failed to cater for the social media needs and big data needs of its citizens. So this is the situation that we are in right now. I do not blame the current government for that. This is the best government we've ever had. But the problems that it faces are immense. So these need to be addressed. And the other problem that we are facing is that our education system is so bad. See, India's education system is a relic of the 19th century colonial education system. Very little has changed. Only superficially or cosmetic changes have been done, but the overall structure is the same. So this is a system that produces clerks and bureaucrats. It is not designed to produce thought leaders or disruptors or innovators. So the mentality and the attitude that is prevalent among the people who come out of the education system is that of a digital coolie and nothing more. So if they go into a software job, if they go into the IT field, they are going to have a certain mindset, and that is to work for the foreigners and make some money and live a good middle class life. So these are things that need to be addressed. These are structural problems within India, and we have very little time to do it. So I hope that this is being addressed right now.
Sure, sure. So let me just go to the next point, which is actually a shade of what we are discussing right now. And that point is about, very interestingly, Mr. Rajiv has put it, saying exporting manpower, but at the same time importing technology. It's a very interesting analysis. So what we are saying here, to quote from his book, is the telecom and information technology revolution, including the spread of the internet, mobile telephones, and social media, has been largely pioneered by the Western firms. But it is fair to say that it's the Indian engineers who played a significant role as employees and contractors working for the companies that own that intellectual property. At the same time, India has become one of the largest markets for importing this technology. So we are exporting our people who are creating an IP somewhere, and we are getting it back in the country. India's software lead was similarly based on labor arbitrage with foreign clients, which is inherently a rickety business model in the long run. So, Mr. Rajiv, you can tell us, in the AI scenario, are we just repeating the same mistake, or are we learning for it? Are you hopeful that, we will one day start building our own intellectual property, our own products, our own capital backing the AI, or do you think we will continue this mistake?
So, the fact that India did not build what IBM calls the Watson, that's their AI engine, India could have built it. And a lot of engineers, scientists, software people working in Watson, IBM, are Indians only. That's the proof. Then they look at GPT-3. India should be developing GPT-4, GPT-5, GPT-N. We should be, if I tell you, if I were 1/3 my age or half my age, I would be doing nothing else but jumping way ahead, leapfrogging ahead of the West and ahead of China, creating next generation platforms, not copying their today's platform. I wouldn't copy today's platforms because they'll be obsolete by the time I've copied them. I would be copying the next generation, 1 or 2 generations ahead. I have a lot of ideas on that. I've hinted a few, but I'm writing more books on that. So this business of organizing your labor, figuring out what does the client need. He needs programmers who know this language, that language. So now the programming language has changed from X to Y, so we'll produce more programmers. It's like the whole country's AI strategy is to be a pipeline supplying to these people, to the other people. Now, in the book, I've criticized a lot of individuals, like, for example, Uday Kotak. Uday Kotak, I've quoted him, one of the billionaires in India. I've quoted him saying that it is his dream. What a silly dream. He says it is his dream that one day the villagers in India will be the ones also trained to work for Microsoft. So I said, what a bunch of, now he wants the villagers to become digital coolies. So this business of let's scale the digital coolie instead of only urban kids, let's also bring it to the villages. All of India is like a digital coolie. So this is are we Vishwa Coolie? Is the vision to become a Vishwa Coolie or a Vishwa Guru? Okay, if you are a Vishwa Guru, then the Vishwa Guru is not somebody who's selling his labor to some other fellow who's he thinks is the guru. We are not Vishwa Guru anywhere. We are not even trying to be. We're talking about it because it feels good. We are bragging before accomplishing it. But what we are actually working towards is the Vishwa Coolie is the trajectory we are on. So this, I do a comparison with the Chinese doing wage arbitrage in manufacturing. Chinese did wage arbitrage, but they took the profit from the manufacturing, margins they had because they had cheap labor. They could sell it at a high price. They took the profit and reinvested in futuristic things. They were not greedy towards making money quickly. They were willing to wait 10 years, 15 years, make big bets. We didn't do that. China bet on solar. It's now the leading country in the world for solar technology. They bet on robotics. They have more robots than in any other country, probably more than US and Europe put together. They bet on quantum computing. Now they're catching up with semiconductors. They're into avionics and aerospace. They're into the futurist things. And we were happy that we are selling labor and we are making money. And this guy, look at NASCOM, how silly. They're just measuring, BPO, clerical job being automated by some guy sitting, in India doing clerical job, some call center fellow. All this automated. When the call centers came, I predicted, I wrote about it, that this call center has a certain life cycle because of the voice response automation, where you'll be able to do automatically. And young people go online, they book their own ticket online. They're not looking for a live operator. People who are around in the below the age of 20 generally don't make phone calls to do banking or booking or buying something. They go online and do it. There's no operator needed. There is no call center needed when you go directly online to somebody's website. So the rise of the web and combined with the rise of the automatic response, voice response systems meant that this call center is going out of business. I would tell my friends who are in that business, but they just want to milk it for the last dollar. That is, this sort of short-sightedness is a very serious problem.
Sure. Mr. Conrad, you have studied the Indian history and you know that, India was once a superpower in science, maths, technology, all of it. We were at the forefront of it. And we were passing it on to the world in a way, if you like it, be the Nalandas or whatever. And now we are at the bottom of it, just providing the people, the capital, the IP is what is missing today. What is your view? Is there a hope? I mean, what should India do there?
Yeah, there was a bit of a downward slope. First, the Mughals, then the British made it much worse in terms of economic impoverishment. Then the Nehru-Indira regime made it even worse. You see, completely missed the chances that India had after independence. But now you see, Indians are doing fairly well, I would say. You see, ever since this digital revolution started, Indian culture has an advantage. First of all, the people are not very book-oriented, not like Jews or Scandinavians. And so now, instead of reading a book, you get a YouTube video clip or something with a short explanation. You get lots of, the Puranic culture and so on is very visual. This medium really lends itself to it. Then it has, and this is very important, it has made possible the mushroom growth of all these Hindu-minded media. And Indians are making use of it quite well. Like I don't see any important names among Hindus being banned from Twitter like Trump has been, because many people use all kinds of guerrilla techniques of outfoxing the algorithms and so on. So admitting that it is still a foreign technology, but Indians are using it to quite an extent to their own advantage. However, in your book, Rajiv, you mention Chris Gopalakrishnan, a co-founder of Infosys, as one person who is on the same wavelength, who is quite aware of this situation and where it is going. But you express yourself, and to the extent that I know this issue, I also had the impression that the government is not on the same wavelength. Now, I remember some 3 years ago, at the time, you see, I was very busy with this problem that the government was not responding to the need for very specific Hindu interests, like a reform of the constitution, abolishing the anti-Hindu discriminations in temple management, in education. And so, I was worried, this government is not responding. Even when some of its party members were entering private bills in parliament in order to do something about it, the government kept completely aloof. Now, you said at the time, to my pleasant surprise, I have met some government ministers, I've met the RSS leadership and so on. They're very intelligent. Well, quite possibly, but I still don't see them doing anything. Like, for example, you argued very convincingly in favor of Sanskrit as the national language, as the medium of instruction and so on. Well, now we have this new educational policy, and this is going to determine the course of the country in this field for a few decades. What we see there is a few crumbs thrown at the vernaculars, but essentially confirming the dominant position of English. And so I have the impression that, good voices are just not being heard. It's also in other fields, like Subramanian Swamy devises a great economic policy and is frustrated that the government is not taking it anywhere. So this is really a question to you. Is there really any progress on that front? Because I have the impression that Hindus are doing well. This book is certainly going to help people like myself, who weren't aware of this, to be attuned to this, and very many people, even in Sanskrit and so on, turn out upon closer looking to have engineering degrees and so on. So I'm very sure that many will pick up this inspiration, take it further. But nevertheless, even in spite of all this churning, not much is going to happen if the government doesn't cooperate or doesn't take the initiative even. So where has this gone?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm glad we are asking amongst ourselves also a question. We should do that. So let me clarify. The past issues where I felt that the government leaders are well connected had to do with Hinduism and Hindutva and breaking India forces and those kind of things, versus AI, where I feel it's a whole new level of knowledge which they don't have. So as far as the previous causes, all the work I've done, I think is now obsolete. I personally think my Breaking India book I'm now writing Breaking India 2.0 in light of artificial intelligence. All of my stuff, all of this whole Hindutva crowd going and doing all these, the people you named also who got all these discussions going on and all this activism going on, and you're part of it also. I feel that they're all obsolete because this AI makes them obsolete. The AI takes the Kurukshetra to a new level, and these people are not prepared. And my book is going to be received with different attitudes from them. So the problem in that topic, and then the problem in the AI topic, different. The problem in all those past topics, I think is my sense is not the BJP leadership or the RSS holding it back. It's the IAS people, it's the bureaucrats, it's the government civil servants. Because it's the civil service is exactly like it was in the past. No reform has taken place. These guys are the way they're selected in this UPSC exam, the kind of training they have in Missouri, a kind of facade of patriotism and Indian culture. But deep down, they've been raised in a very westernized, secularized, almost Hindu-phobic kind of attitude. I've given many talks at in the IAS Academy in Missouri, at the Foreign Service Institute in Delhi. So I know the mentality that's out there. I would say that problem of civil service colonization has not been changed by anybody so far. Now, AI is a new problem. AI is a problem where not only the civil service is obsolete, but I think the RSS people are obsolete, the BJP people, the government people, none of them know anything about it. So now I want to ask you, Conrad, my question. This is the question I wanted to ask you. I've been waiting for a long time. You know the Hindutva leaders in the public space, and they all want to stampede over each other, get more retweets, get more donations, get more likes. They're all into that. But none of them wrote this AI book, and I've been at it for 5 years. And in my private conversations with some of them, they poo-pooed the idea. So I said, okay, to hell with them. I'll just go write the book and let's see how the public demands. So first part of the question is, They're obsolete. Why they're obsolete? They didn't do research. Is it that they're tamasic people? They just want to get quick value, quick limelight, copy, beg, borrow, steal ideas from somebody and just take it out. They've all been copying it. They've all been copying. I want you to comment on this. My thesis is they've all been copying the Breaking India thesis and the Breaking India Foundation and turning it into whether it is Naxals, whether it is urban, whether it is Maoist, whether this or that, evangelism, all those basic principles and fabric discussed in Breaking India, and they made 10 years of career out of it for the last 10 years. Okay, so that is part one of my observation. I want your comment on it. Part two of my observation is, now that I've brought out AI after 5 years of hard work, you are going to see a stampede of people who will suddenly claim to be AI experts. Okay, everybody claim to be the AI expert, dropping in these buzzwords, and pretty soon the ones who are lacking ethics will not even refer to my book. They will plagiarize. They will exclude me. They will have their panels without inviting me. They will have their manthans and literary festivals where I will be told I can't go, when in fact they've taken my ideas and moved forward. So in this book, I call it a crisis of character. I say a society is doomed when it lacks that kind of character. It cannot even reward merit. What about building paramparas and sampradayas and lineages like in the past? Forget that. If somebody is innovative and somebody has done great work and put a lot of effort into it, stuck his neck out, fighting for it, putting all he got, tan, man, dhan into it, you don't even appreciate that. And you are basically interested in sidelining him so you can get ahead, stand on his shoulders, jump ahead, and don't even worry about him. That kind of society is doomed. Karmically also, our tradition says that such a society doesn't deserve to succeed. So I want to know what your thoughts are. Part one, why these guys fail to do something of this kind. Part two, do you think they will repeat what they did in the last 10 years with my work, which is to plagiarize, copy, move it forward as their own, become very famous, and try to hide me, try to knock me down, try to criticize me, try to attack me, without recognizing that they actually got these ideas from me? So can you comment? Because I think you are very uniquely positioned. You are very uniquely positioned to be an honest person in this regard. And please tell us.
Right. Well, quite a few outsiders say, and here I have to beg your indulgence because it's not nice to say, but you see, they gave a modern version of what the first Western travelers to India also said. You see, they had these stereotypes: the violent Muslims, the indolent Buddhists, the perverse Chinese. And this way they also had the deceptive Indians. And so, quite a few outside businessmen, and I've heard it from Indians too, say, well, you see, this is the Indian way of trying to get advantages quick, and you see, not contributing except just enough to get maximum profit. Well, you see that stereotype has grown over time. So one thing that used to be said is that Hindus have a terrible inferiority complex. Now that is getting remedied. I mean, that I can see for myself. You see, the now upgrowing generation has a lot more self-confidence. Is still, as a fashion statement, imitating, the West is Americanizing. At the same time, it is more confident in its own ability to build things, to create new things. Now, not much of that has come yet, partly because it lacks leadership. And so there a revolution is needed, particularly within the Hindu movement. You see, the Hindu movement that has come about represents not the whole of Hinduism, one very specific tendency that has grown completely oversized, that has captured the government and so on, and that originates in the 20s, in the high tide of nationalism, just after the First World War, when you see every society had uniforms, did marching with bands and so on. And so the RSS is very much like that. And part of that original culture is a strong aversion to intellectual work. As RSS people say, do you need any learning to love your mother? So, why don't you serve your motherland with all this intellectual business? They also don't look at the feedback they get, from the mentality of, the Boy Scout mentality of do well and don't look back. And so that is still there. I mean, here I'm a little bit surprised that it takes so long to outgrow that. Like, for instance, I remember the days when RSS people were always on the march, always going somewhere, because in the 20s, Che Guevara, their founder, had been in the revolutionary movement, where to avoid discovery by the police, they never wrote papers to one another. They only communicated in person. And so that mentality has overstayed for decades. And so in that sense, you see, the Hindu movement is very slow, is far slower than Hindus in general. But they are the ones in power, not the Hindus who have more to offer. I mean, I do not have an immediate remedy. I mean, I think I've diagnosed the problem, but now it's first of all Indians who will have to do it. You see, there I am powerless. I can only say what I see, and there I'm trying to get people, who can reach the government circles and so on, to point them to this, to make them more aware of this, because this leadership is going to make a whole lot of difference. There is a great potential among the new generations. I'm pleasantly surprised by this wherever I go. But it's not going to go very far if it's not, as the RSSs want to say, if it's not organized.
So, but Conrad, this is all very good, and I agree with much of it, most of it, in fact. But my question is a little different. Had Rajiv Malhotra been an RSS man and doing all this within the RSS, you can bet they would all be very loyal. They would all be, reading his books and turning it into different languages and supporting him. But they are not, because I'm not part of their organization. Therefore, they don't even want to. They just want to take my knowledge but dump me. Yes to his ideas, no to him. That's kind of a thing. And I find that in the gurus, if I were in a guru organization, let's forget RSS. If I were in a guru organization, the same thing would happen. I would be, if I produced all this work, this would be something that a lot of shishyas would emerge, and they would be reading all this and writing it and promoting it. They would not try to sideline me. Okay, they would not sideline me if I were an RSS guy. They would not sideline me if I were a guru in a guru organization and the guru adopted me. If they would not sideline me if I were in the BJP or in any political organization, in the Congress party, or if I were in the Communist Party. Doesn't matter which, in any political organization. If I were in an institution, be it a grassroots RSS institution, be it a political institution, be it a guru institution, if I were in one of those institutions, then the work I've done would propagate much further in a more systematic way. There would be a school of thought. There would be teacher training. Then the teachers would be going and training other people. So it would not be a stampede of irresponsible entrepreneurs, everybody claiming originality. Like in the past 1 week, some AI type people have spawned out of nowhere who were nowhere on the scene. And they haven't done this hard work. They don't know, they don't even know much of it, but they'll just read my book and start turning it into their own. So my question to you is this something about not knowing how to build institutions in general? Is it lack of ethics and plagiarism that says, okay, copy, beg, borrow, steal, because India doesn't necessarily respect intellectual property? And is this a failure in the of some kind that India is paying the price for? Because in India, fashion comes out, everybody, there is no, unless you are an icon. If you are an icon, if you are a famous person, some movie star or some kind of, so either you have to be a celebrity, or you have to be an RSS person, or you have to be joining a leader in one of the many political parties, whichever one, or you have to be a spiritual guru. If you're one of these, then you get traction to build a movement where people will actually take your work and move it forward. Whereas in my case, having invested so much and done so much, Basically, I'm giving it away. It's like India doesn't have intellectual property because the West takes it, but at least they give you fair wages. In my intellectual property, they take away without giving me anything. So what do you think of that? What do you think of me as a case study in the failure of the Hindu movement to be able to organize around a thought leader who they know has helped them, who privately they all come to me. Konrad, all these guys who are out there with their YouTube channels and their Twitterati and millions of followers here and there, privately when they meet me, they say, thank you. You are the one who taught us. Without this, we didn't know. Now we are very clear. You explained, your book was the Bible of all this, that kind of thing they tell me. Okay. And then they go in public, they want nothing to do with me. What is the reason for that? I think this conversation will give us a clue into a major crisis of character. And I will ask Abhijit also the same question, but I first want to hear your views.
At the thought level, one thing that may help is to impress upon people more of a view of the future. Yeah, that's like what the life coaches and so on say. You have to be goal-oriented. You have to very vividly visualize what it is that you're going to, what it is that you want to achieve. And conversely, you have to also vividly visualize where you're going to end if you keep on doing something wrong. If you can't stop with drinking alcohol, well, visualize yourself in the gutter 10 years from now. So if that's not what you want, okay, then muster the courage to do something about it. So maybe that's something we haven't done enough yet, though, of course, your book precisely is future-oriented. So we have to make that more of a thought habit to really picture that, to really make that present.
No, but my complaint is that we did not our thought leaders, who are considered thought leaders, the Hindu thought leaders, missed the boat on AI, and I've been working on it for 5 years. And rather than helping me whenever I went for help privately, they would just kind of set it aside and keep milking. The idea of milking wage arbitrage, we criticized it, wage arbitrage, milking it for quick money, and then milking the breaking India for quick notoriety and quick fame. Yeah, rather than investing just like we failed to invest in the next generation AI software, also failing to invest in the next generation of leading thoughts. What are the next generation frameworks? So if in a country like that, in a society like that, if you're ahead of the game, if you are a thinker, pioneer, you'll migrate to America because you don't think that this country respects that. So just like the country wouldn't respect futuristic thought leaders in technology, and they got to go to America. What about a cultural, civilizational thought leader like me, feeling that this country cannot respect that either? And so why the hell do I want to stick around? Maybe I'll do this kind of pioneering work for the Chinese. Maybe they'll hire me, or maybe some Christian group will hire me, and I'll teach them about Christianity and AI, how they can become more futuristic. Maybe I got better clients elsewhere. Maybe I chased the wrong. Maybe I helped the wrong culture, because maybe in my personal heart, because I'm a devout Hindu, therefore I've assumed that others are like that. But maybe they're not like that. And maybe the pursuit of helping a civilization, which is hopeless in terms of its ethics, its moral values, its ability to support somebody on meritocracy, maybe that's a bad thing. So Abhijit, what is your thought on this? As an Indian, watching how Indians are, how do you feel about the lack of caliber? Take me as a case study.
So it is indeed quite dispiriting to see how the things are. The question is, these people whom we call thought leaders, are they actually thought leaders? Do they produce any actual original ideas, or do they just jump on trends?
Yes.
So for example, for decades, we have had these experts on Pakistan and international relations. International relations in India means just Pakistan. Now, in the past year or so, you have had this mushrooming of China experts all of a sudden, because India and China went to blows. So it's a trend that they've jumped on. And now, like you said, I can expect that there's going to be a mushrooming of AI experts in the country based upon your book. So this is a failure of leadership. These people who call themselves thought leaders, the question is, whom do they serve? Leadership is service. You need to have a constituency whom you serve. So whom do these people really serve? Do they serve the people of India? Do they serve the Hindus, or do they serve themselves? Do they really promote themselves? Is that what is their real objective? So that is the question that I would like to raise, actually. Now, I would say that monopolies are bad. And in India, there is a monopoly on leadership of Hindus. There's only one political stream that has monopolized the leadership of the Hindu people. So I believe Hindus need options. And if you have options, then there'll be competition, healthy competition among them.
Yes. Yes.
So that is what I think.
Yeah. So, but Abhijit, continuing on this point, the jugaad, instead of research into AI, instead of research into breaking India, instead of research into being different, my things take years, decades, sometimes a decade to produce one major book. And I have 20 more books I'm going to publish because I've been researching them for a very long time, and I need to publish them. I don't find people putting in that much effort. They are doing jugaad, copy, paste here and there, put their name on it and change some words here and there and go to the market. That is lack of leadership, like you said. I agree. What about the followers who go chasing them? What about lot of people come to me and say, oh, so-and-so, I don't want to name people because then it gets nasty. Okay, so I won't name anybody. What about so-and-so? He's saying all these things. I tell him, Arey bhaiya, he got it from here only. Okay. What about the people who ought to be supporting a pioneer are supporting the copycat? Okay. So the copycat, the pilfered version, the pirated version doing better in the market than the original. There was a time when you could buy all the Microsoft pirated in some Nehru place for 100 rupees. This kind of, that's what it was said commonly. So this business of pirating the know-how, pirating somebody's research. So while he's spending the money on R&D and he's putting so much effort, all his life he's spending on R&D, you take his work and spin it and spend your time on promoting yourself. So you are more of a promoter of creating your own brand using his intellectual property while he's creating new intellectual property. So if that is the game that is happening in a marketplace, this game would succeed only if the public makes it succeed. Public could be more ethical. Public could be saying, Arey bhaiya, you should acknowledge this guy. You go work with him, help him out. He'll do 5x more, 10x more work if you were to help him. Rather help him than to branch off and try to make your own. The public doesn't even have the sense. So if the leaders are like that, if the leaders are no good and the followers are just a bunch of random people looking for instant gratification, then what happens to a society. In this book I've written, please read it. In this book I've written, read it again carefully. Now that you guys have read the book, you can read it more closely. In this book, I'm saying that such people are vulnerable to being captured for their agency by the digital giants, by the AI systems, by the machine learning systems, because they do not have a grounding. They're not grounded in ethics. They're not grounded in dharma. They're too opportunistic. They have very low attention span. They're jumping here, there, whichever the latest, whoever has. If I have fewer views and somebody who copied my idea got more views, people will go to him. Even though he's basically got no originality. Okay. So I'm always being told that you need to do marketing and promotion. So this business of original research is not appreciated, but promotion, self-promotion is appreciated. Tells me something about the nature of people. And if we are so broken, in character, in our own dharma, because dharma doesn't say that. Dharma says, in the old days, if somebody had a view concerning Vedanta, they would quote Shankara, whether they're agreeing or disagreeing is a later. They would not promote that it is my own original idea. They would quote, they are required that you quote the Shastra, then you give your view. You can have a different view. Next guy who comes afterwards will quote the original Shastra, your view, and then his view. This is how, when you learn Vedanta, you learn the whole history of thought of all the people, all the commentaries. All the commentaries are required part of your education. So if somebody want to today take on this Breaking India force, they ought to start with where is an original book on this, and then who wrote something, then who wrote something, then who developed it further, who took it in a different direction. That would be the learning. But today's youth got no time for that. The people who are funding, donating, the people who are sponsoring, they also are have no. So Conrad, instead of asking me to, you should go to so and so person X because he knows more. Such person X themselves are lost. They are also chasing the latest. They are chasing the latest fellow getting views. And therefore, the platform they're creating, the Manthans, the Lit Fest they're creating are all opportunistic, bringing in the latest celebrities who got the latest views last week. Now, this is a very short-sighted culture, Abhijit. Tell me, this is a very short-sighted group of people. We can't blame government for it. It is the character of the average person.
Rajivji, you speak about the moronization of the masses.
Yes.
So I would say that the moronization of the masses has been happening for over a century through our education system.
Yes.
The education system does not endow the students with the ability to discern right from wrong.
Right.
It doesn't give you the ability to think critically.
Right.
It simply turns you into sheep.
Yes.
And that's what's been happening for decades, for over a century.
Yes.
And that is, and the other thing is that in 1947, a nation state was born and a civilization died. So India is no longer grounded in the dharmic culture. Indians are confused, they're lost, they're rootless. And that is why there is a lack of ethics. And then there is this Pavlovian conditioning that shortcuts will get you results, but hard work is going to give you basically misery. So this is the entire milieu that India is in right
Very
now.
correct.
And that is the reason why we are facing things like this.
Yes. I think you've diagnosed it correctly. This is exactly the position in my book also. The moron people. Because of past, we lost our self-esteem, we became slaves, we were beaten up, so we turned into morons. Now we go after the limelight. So just like going after this Mughal guy is very big, or this British Angrez guy is very big shot, or this political guy, this movie star is very big. Okay, so this cricketer is very big, because we cannot judge for ourselves. If a celebrity holds a bottle of some milk or drink or a product or shoes or whatever, he may not be an expert in this at all, but the average consumer thinks that I'll buy this product because this celebrity likes it. So if the celebrity likes it, I'll also buy it. This kind of a being prone to very icon and idol worship. Okay, becoming a character is a very typical of morons. Morons become idol worshippers because they don't have the brains to figure out for themselves. So this idol worshipping and moronization means that even a serious thought leader like me, unless I become an idol, to the extent I become popular, only to that extent people will support me. People are not able to support that the sense in this book is so profound, we ought to support it because the book has merit. It'll be like, what do we think of Rajiv versus person X? And person X got more views, so I go with him. So this business of chasing social media, and Indians becoming more vulnerable to the digital giants is because the Indian public is crazy, hungry, thirsty for joining a bandwagon, joining somebody's jalus. Kisi ka jalus ho raha hai, some parade going on, some pageantry going on, become part of that. This is that is why India is failing as a nation.
Yes. No. So I was listening to the fabulous thoughts which are emerging from this discussion. Mr. Rajiv started the discussion saying, "I'm not going to discuss about a Python code or programming. It's about the Indian society, and AI is just a metaphor as to what India is and what we need to do." And I was able to link all of that with these thoughts which are there. And if you were to allow me to summarize, taking AI as an example, what the country needs to do to take on the challenges of China or imperialism or challenging India or breaking India forces, if I were to summarize that, first is being ability to build institutions rather than just working as individuals for somebody X, Y, Z, and praying up to the bigger forces. So one is being able to build institutions. Second is, you mentioned not taking short-term shortcuts and persevering, playing a long inning, so to say, to build something big. So that is the second lesson. And again, AI is only a metaphor here, not just being coding for someone, but building my own IP. So that is the second one. Third is being able to take bigger risks. One of the reasons we don't have our own AI IP and products is because we are happy selling ourselves for a salary rather than playing the long inning and taking the risk, putting our capital and so on. So we're always playing with somebody else's capital. So that is the third thing, being able to take those bigger risks. Fourth is the work ethics, which is consistently coming out in this discussion, which is giving due to whoever has done a good job, getting inspired with it, reflecting upon it, and trying to do better than that with that inspiration. So I think it's fascinating that we started with AI, but we layer by layer we went to the core of what is India, and this applies beautifully not just to AI but to all the fields that we see around us, be it Swachh Bharat, be it any of the good things that we want to do and see India as rising nation. It will apply to all of it, and this discussion applies to the society at large as to what we Indians should be doing, to the corporate world in terms of taking risks, doing something new, and to the workforce in general, not chasing short-term goals, but trying to aspire to be big. So I think we started off with AI, but as we should have, we ended up with tackling and discussing where we lack as a nation and applying those principles not just to AI but to country as a whole. So indeed, it's a very eye-opening and a very layered discussion, which took us to the last layer of it. So thank you so much. If you have any last words, I'm happy to invite any of you to say that. But I think that's it from my side.
We've ended up with facing a few problems that, of course, I don't want to minimize. But nevertheless, as books go, you see, I think this is the kind of book that really opens new horizons.
I would like to ask one question to Mr. Rajiv. I said earlier that I believe India has about a decade or so to catch up with the rest of the world in AI development. What is your opinion? What do you think? How long India does have?
Well, I've made it very clear in the book that India probably by the and if you've been obviously listening to a lot of my discussions that I've been having with various people, I've said that by the middle of this decade, which is only 4 years away, cracks in India's sovereignty will become obvious. I'm not even waiting till the end of 2030. I'm saying that cracks in India's sovereignty, its ability to survive as a nation state, because of some of these battlegrounds, what they're going to do in a very rapid way. And I'm writing a sequel to this book to explain that. So that these cracks will become very obvious. People will become more and more people will begin to say that instead of this whole Vishwa Guru Banno stuff, let's really ask hard questions about our existential threats are coming. And I do not see the current thinking, leadership, the current planning, whether it's from Niti Aayog, whether it is our spiritual gurus, whether it is all these Hindutva social media icons, whether it is industry, I don't see that comprehensive framework, and I don't see a good enough strategic vision that would change course fast enough, and we're running out of time. I don't want to be negative, so I say a lot of things in this book, but as Conrad has noticed, and Abhijit, you've noticed, and Alpesh, you've noticed, I fall short of then making it clear when it's terrible bad news, because I don't want people to be scared and not read it. And I want them to face it, understand it. But if those who are thoughtful will realize that there are some very naughty questions which the people currently are not the ones who are in charge, whether it is social face who are these icons, or whether it is all these big, powerful people, just don't have it in them to be able to sort it out. Because the forces at work are exceedingly powerful. And I'm not disclosing certain things in this book. I don't want to. But I have, when I did my Breaking India, I infiltrated a whole lot of these foreign excesses, which is what I wrote about. I've done the same now. The BI 2.0. Now I'm trying to popularize Breaking India 2.0 as a hashtag, and intellectual Kshatriya 2.0 is needed. You can upgrade yourself to an intellectual Kshatriya 2.0 by reading this book. But in order to have written this book, I got into various groups, various organizations that are now getting ready and creating the mischief that I'm calling BI 2.0. So BI 2.0 is not some fantasy that'll happen in 10 years. It's happening. And there is funding, there are products, there are strategies, there are algorithms, they're testing them out. And you will start seeing these happen very quickly. That's my prediction.
Okay. I seriously hope, Rajiv ji, that your thoughts do not actually scare the people and put them in a shell, but inspire them to come out and do something. Also, you mentioned about a lot of books which are upcoming, so we'll look forward to those books and inspire into action. So thank you so much for these thoughts. Thank you for your time. I personally enjoyed listening to you and discussing with you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you, all of you. It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure to interact with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.